Ask someone a difficult question and watch their eyes. They will not stay still. They will move up and to the left or down and to the right or sideways or briefly closed, depending on what kind of thinking the person is doing. You did not teach them to do this. They did not decide to do it. And if you ask them afterward where their eyes went, they almost certainly could not tell you. The movement is involuntary, automatic, and according to decades of research, deeply connected to the hidden architecture of how your brain actually retrieves, constructs, and processes information. The eye movements that accompany thought are called saccades, rapid involuntary shifts of gaze that the brain produces constantly, far more often than most people realize. Your eyes are almost never truly still. Even when you believe you are looking steadily at a fixed point, your eyes are making tiny, continuous micro-movements, small tremors and drifts that the brain's visual system actively compensates for so that the world appears stable. But when you are thinking, when you are retrieving a memory or constructing a mental image or working through a problem, the saccades become larger and more directional. They go somewhere specific. And that somewhere is not random. The neuroscientist Daniel Richardson at University College London has spent years studying the relationship between eye movements and cognition. His research and the work of many others has established that when people are asked to recall a specific memory, their eyes tend to move toward the spatial location associated with that memory. Not toward the object itself, because the object is not present, but toward where it was, or where the mental representation of it is stored, as though the brain is physically directing the sensory organs toward the internal storage location the same way you might physically turn toward a bookshelf when you are trying to remember which book you read something in. This phenomenon is known as the looking at nothing effect. You look at nothing, an empty patch of air, a blank wall, a featureless ceiling. Because the information you need is not out there in the world. It is in here, in the internal landscape of your memory. And your eyes, following an ancient and largely unconscious instruction from your brain, turn toward it anyway. Why would the brain do this? Why would it direct the eyes toward a location in empty space, rather than simply retrieving the information internally without any eye movement at all?
The answer appears to lie in how memory itself is organized. Research suggests that human memory is deeply spatial. Events, objects, and experiences are stored not just as abstract information, but as part of a mental map tagged to the locations where they occurred, the directions from which they were perceived, the spatial context in which they were embedded. When you try to remember something, you are not just pulling a file from a neutral storage system. You are navigating a mental landscape, orienting yourself within it, and the eyes appear to participate in that navigation process as a genuine functional contribution, not merely as a side effect.
In a landmark series of experiments by Ferreira and colleagues, participants heard a sentence describing a scene and then had to answer questions about it while looking at a blank screen. Their eye movements reliably tracked toward the spatial locations that the described objects had occupied in the original scene, even though those objects were no longer visible and the screen showed nothing. The memory and the gaze were inseparably linked.
This spatial tagging of memory is almost certainly an evolutionary product of the environment your ancestors moved through. In a world where survival depended on remembering where the water source was, where the predator had been spotted, which direction led back to camp, spatial memory was not a luxury. It was a survival tool. And the coordination between memory retrieval and gaze direction may have served a practical function. If you remembered where the food was and your eyes moved toward that location, the perceptual system was primed to detect any relevant visual information in that direction, making you faster to respond if the food or the predator was still there. But the relationship between eye movement and thinking goes even deeper than memory retrieval. Research in the area of embodied cognition, the study of how the body participates in thinking rather than merely carrying the brain around, has found that different kinds of thinking produce different patterns of eye movement. Constructive thinking, building a new mental image or solving a novel problem, produces different eye movement patterns than retrieval thinking, which involves accessing something already stored. Abstract language comprehension produces different patterns than spatial reasoning. Emotional memory retrieval produces different patterns than factual memory retrieval. The psychologist Robert Fance at Case Western Reserve University pioneered the study of visual attention and found that even newborn infants show preferential looking patterns toward faces, toward high contrast edges, toward moving objects, patterns that reflect the brain's pre-installed priorities about what information matters most. From the very first minutes of life, the brain is directing the eyes according to its own internal logic, not according to anything the infant has learned or been taught. This means that the movement of your eyes is not a window into your soul, despite what various popular psychology claims have suggested, but it is a window into your cognitive process. The direction your gaze moves when you think is a reliable, measurable signal of what kind of mental work your brain is currently doing and where, spatially, in your mental landscape it is doing it.
Consider what this means the next time you are in a conversation and you watch the other person's eyes drift to one side while they search for a word, or up and to the right while they try to remember a face, or down and inward as they process something emotional. You are not watching a social behavior. You are watching a cognitive process made briefly visible. You are seeing, in real time, the eye following the mind into the internal space where it does its most private work.
The eyes are not just receiving information from the world, they are participating in how the brain organizes, retrieves, and constructs information about the world. The gaze is not passive, it is part of the thinking itself. And the next time someone asks you a question that makes you look away, that sends your eyes drifting towards some specific, seemingly arbitrary point in empty space, know that it is not arbitrary at all. Your brain knows exactly where it is looking. It has always known. It is just that the destination is not somewhere you can see.